Time now to take a look at what's making headlines in the international newspapers. Solange Mijan joins us for that. Solange, you're going to start us off with editorials on Haiti following that assassination of President Jovenel Moise and now the arrest of a number of the apparent assailants.
Yeah, if an editorial can scream, let this be a scream. That is the message today on the front page of the Swiss paper Le Temps. The paper writes that Haiti is and has been teetering on chaos, and that many have thrown up their hands, not knowing what to do. That the country is, quote, a mirror of sorts of humanitarian deadlock. From Geneva, where instructions are often laid out, are given to figure out how to help the country, America's poorest nation. The Swiss paper says that even if people feel that there is nothing left to be done, we need to fight with force, they say. That a great coalition must emerge to help stem the chaos. But that for now, Haiti is quote-unquote, our failure, the martyr of our indifference. Now, the Wall Street Journal, it takes on much of the same tone. It looks back at Jovenel Moise, how for his supporters, he is, quote, a giant slayer or a rare Haitian politician that took on oligarchs. And for his enemies, he was illegitimately still in power, trying to grab power as well. Now, the paper says that many have long said that Haiti's 2-century-long institutional bedlam is not going to end well. The Journal concludes it didn't, and now Haitians must begin again. Now, this sadness is also expressed in the Haitian press. The Nouvelliste has an editorial by the acclaimed writer and member of the France's Académie Française, Denis Laferrière. And he says that many people actually look to him for insight on Haiti, but he says that now he is at a loss for words, that other texts, namely one called The Villages of God, do describe Haiti today, but that he, a respected Haitian intellectual, well, he has nothing left to say.
Gosh, that says it all, doesn't it, in many ways. Let's move on, Solange, and to South Africa, where former President Jacob Zuma is behind bars.
Yeah, it is done. That is the headline today of the Sowetan, referring to Zuma being jailed for contempt of court. Now, the sentence to spend 15 months in jail was handed down last week, and his supporters and he himself protested, saying he wouldn't go to jail. But as Business Day tells us, there were orders to forcefully take him into custody if he didn't turn himself in, and he had been pushing for a stay on that order. But the paper says he is now in custody.
Okay. Let's switch gears. You've picked up on an investigative report by Reuters in China.
Yeah, this article took my breath away. It is, for me, the most poignant of the press review, in part because it is almost hard to believe. It gives you potentially a look into what the future warfare could be like. Reuters tells us that that a Chinese gene company has been selling prenatal tests. These are the kind you use to see, for example, if your unborn child has Down syndrome. Well, after the results come in, this company has been taking the data from those tests and keeping it, and the Chinese military has been using it to, quote, improve population quality and potentially unlock genomes secrets. And it isn't just Chinese women. More than 8 million women have taken these tests worldwide, creating a sort of genetic data center that the U.S. Counterintelligence Center says, quote, poses not just a privacy risk, but also an economic and a national security risk to entire populations. Now, for such information could potentially one day, the Reuters report says, not only help China dominate the pharmaceutical world, but it also could create genetically engineered soldiers and engineering pathogens to potentially target specific populations.
Anytime we have to give away DNA, it does make you instantly start to question and worry.
Anytime genomes are kept in secret banks, it makes you question things.
Yeah, just anything to do with DNA is like your fingerprints. It's like it's too personal. But meanwhile, you've also spotted some articles discussing good news when it comes to medical advances.
Yeah, Slate tells us a lovely story about how surgeons, they've managed to use magnets, to help heal a 2-year-old who was born with a deformation to his esophagus. Now, this is the first time that this has ever been done, and Slate tells us they actually used the magnets to help pull together tissues of the child's esophagus that weren't touching. It took a couple of weeks, but it worked, and he was able, at 2 years old, to eat correctly for the first time and take a first bite of birthday cake.
Amazing. Well done to them for thinking of that. Moving across now to Afghanistan, where the press continues to discuss the withdrawal of US and NATO troops.
Yeah, with the daily advances of the Taliban, The Guardian tells us that many Afghan women, they've been taken to the streets to demonstrate, with many of them wearing, as you can see there, assault rifles. Now, the paper says that this is to show a sort of defiance against the Taliban, and as most of them will not be heading to the front lines because of social conservatism and also because potentially of a lack of experience. But it is a sign, rather, the paper says, of how scared Afghan women are about a return to the Taliban and what that return to Taliban rule could mean for them. A possible return to life as it was before the U.S. presence in the country. That is the subject of a cartoon today in USA Today. It has an injured Afghan saying, "Your help made all the difference." An American soldier replies, "Thanks." Meanwhile, his colleague gets it and says, "That was an insult."
Well, finally, Solange, well, that's indeed the word of your next article, the word on many minds across in England today.
Yes, finally. It is scrolled across the British press today because within the word finally, there is the word final. And England has finally made it to the finals of the Euro, having beaten Denmark 2-1 last night at home at Wembley. And the British press, as you can see there, is going go crazy with happiness about this. It has been 55 years since the 1966 World Cup that England has gotten to the final so far. So the stakes are pretty high for Sunday.
And they are up against a pretty strong Italian-looking side on Sunday. Solange Rizon will have to leave it there, but thanks indeed for that look at the international papers.